Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. On Fridays, we talk about the product owner role in Scrum. We talk about patterns and anti-patterns that relate to ours and the team's collaboration with the product owner. And we've also put together a course to help you navigate that relationship. There's 18 modules, nearly 8 hours of tools, techniques, videos, handouts, presentations you can use to help you and your team work better with your product owner. The course is available at bit.ly/coach-your-PO. All lowercase, all one word. That's bit.ly/coach-your-PO. And now, on to the show, the Product Owner Show. TGIF, everybody. Today's Friday, and we have, unfortunately, for the last time, but fortunately, still one time, Shoaib Naik. Hey, Shoaib, welcome back.
Thank you for having me again, even if it's for the last time, Vasco.
Absolutely. So, Shoaib, on Fridays, we want to explore our relationship with the product owner and, of course, the relationship between the product owner and the team as well. So we'll dive first into a anti-pattern. We'll talk about a great example later. But first, tell us, what was potentially the worst product owner anti-pattern you've witnessed in your career, Shoaib?
I think it was, it's an easy one for me. It was not understanding the importance of release management, which is like release planning. The value which we get from building a product or a solution for our stakeholders or a client is that they are able to see it as soon as possible, validate it as soon as possible. And you can validate the solution or a product you're building for them only when it reaches a live environment, as we call it in the IT world, production environment, where it will be used by the end users. So this whole process of doing the release planning to release deployments was not being done properly.
And can you give us an example? So I'm imagining that in the sprint planning, you were talking about what we can release this sprint. Was that the case?
Yes. I mean, so I came into this project in middle of their sprints. They were already formed. There was a previous Scrum Master who left, and then I joined in his place, and I took over this team. And I found that there was, in the sense, the features we are going just haphazardly. There was no connection with one feature going in with the other feature. And at times, you can say some tests we are not done properly. We are missing some tests. There was not a proper release strategy, which, you understand, if you put a untested code reaches a production environment, it can wreak havoc with the client systems. So these were the things that were happening.
And I'm thinking that the product owner might even have known about this, but perhaps not understood why their role was important, right? So tell us, how do you see the role of the product owner in this context of helping the team know, what goes live, when, with what, and is it properly tested? How do you talk to product owners about this aspect that you call release planning?
So mostly in this case of a product owner, I took up the role of a mentor. You can say that, sharing examples from my past project on how it was implemented, how it worked. In this case, the product owner didn't believe that the release, like when it should go and what date and all that, the product owner didn't believe that it was his or her responsibility. That person was just thinking that till I'm just writing the user stories, doing the refinement with the team, talking with the stakeholder, that's just enough. So I had to connect that, see the value that you will actually bring to your client, whatever requirements you're gathering, converting them into user stories, showing them to the team, is when they reach the live environment, production environment. So you have to tie up from one end with the client to the other end with the team till the production environment. You are responsible end to end for the product. You are the product. That is why you are called the product owner. You need to own the product or the solution end to end. And I'm there to support you and coach you. So I guess here I had to work in tandem with the product owner. We used story mapping. That was a really good tool to do a proper
for release planning, you mean?
For release planning. We divided it like the features and the user stories: release 1, release 2, release 3, and we improved certain things on the deployment front as well, as to what kind of testing we should do before UAT with the client, what should be ready, and after UAT when we put it to production, what should happen. So these all things.
And you did that together with the PO, right?
Yes,
like you
yes.
helped them understand where the gaps were, and then you worked, okay, so how do we fill this gap, right?
Yes, again it is not only telling them theoretically things. It's not like telling them I'm the Scrum Master and here are the things and you go ahead and do it, but working with them and making sure that you support them, since they didn't understand. It was not that they didn't want to do it, they didn't understand it. So once they understood it, they took it over from me. So I had to work with them for a while to get this going.
Yeah, and actually that's one important realization, right? Is that when we help the product owner do something that eventually ends up being clear why it's valuable, then they are happy to take over, right? Like as soon as they understand, oh, that's why we do these things, right? Like I really like the aspect of emphasizing the practical side, right? Like let's not do the whole theory. Let's just do this now. Like what's going out next sprint? How does that fit the overall release, and what do we need to do in order to make sure we can release it to production, right? Like
yes.
Talking about those things in practice. And this allows the product owner to then feel safe and secure in their job, and of course, ultimately take over.
That's right.
So this was an anti-pattern that you were able to resolve with some concrete practices, of course. But there's also the opposite, right? The mirror image, the great product owners. And it's important for us to understand how they work so that we might bring some of that and discuss that with our product owners. So share with us, Shoaib, what was potentially the best product owner you've ever worked with?
The first person that comes to my mind is the product owner from my first project. I think he was able to balance the stakeholder expectation and the team's expectations, perfectly. I guess this was a balance Thanos was looking to restore to universe in Avengers. So he was able to do it pretty well in his product owner role. He was also one of the reasons why I could go from 100% required Scrum Master to a 20-25% needed Scrum Master. I think the skills he exhibited was, I would say he was a very good facilitator and communicator, not only verbally, but visually as well. Like the tools he used, for example, presenting to the team, the user stories, writing, like along with the team, when he used to write the user stories, he used to define it. He had a particular format of writing those user stories, and so that all the things are in one place. And he did the basics right. He knew what was important to get a project delivered or have that balance between the team and the stakeholders. He understood what it was needed to deliver value from to the client, not just from the product point of view, but from the team point of view as well. So
what do you mean from the team point of view?
He didn't put unnecessary pressure on the team. Like if the client would come and say that, okay, we need this requirement to be done, and he would come and discuss it with the team, and then if the team would give a logical reason to why we shouldn't do it right now, or it doesn't make sense with the features we are developing right now for this feature to go, he would understand that and go back and explain it to the client or the stakeholders.
And actually that means that he was listening to the team, not just telling them what to do, but actually, okay, this is what we want. Is it possible? How is it possible? What part of it is and what part of it isn't, and why, so I can discuss it with the client, right?
That was a good point that you picked up. Listening skills, I would say, were great. He was more than capable to run things on his own, but what I liked about him was his approach, like this listening thing that you just talked about. Like he just talked with all the team members. It doesn't matter if it's a new developer or a developer who has worked in the industry for the last 15 years. He gave equal amount of time and respect to everyone.
Yeah, that's very important. Equal amount of time and respect to everyone, because that's how we become a team, right? Because if it's just me telling you what to do, then it's not a team. It's me, right? It's right. Whatever I'm capable of. But when we listen, then we can become much better because everybody contributes and we find different angles we didn't think about. And of course, we learn what others are willing and not willing, capable and not capable of doing.
Yeah. It is as much important for a Scrum Master, but also for a PO also to have that listening skills.
Absolutely. That's a great point. Shoaib, thank you for sharing all of these stories and insights with us. It's been a pleasure to have you here this week. We are, however, close to the end. So do tell us, where can we find out more about you and the work that you're doing?
You can either add me on LinkedIn, my LinkedIn profile, and there is a Medium blog where I write. There are just 3 blogs right now, but I'm in process of adding more. So both you will find the link to this Medium blog. I can share it with you, and you can share it with podcast listeners who want to go and read my blogs. Other than this, you can also find it on my LinkedIn profile.
Absolutely. And we'll put the link to those blog and LinkedIn page on the show notes. Make sure that people find it easily. Shoaib, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for your generosity with your time and your knowledge.
Thank you. I would also like to thank you, Vasco, for taking out time for this podcast and giving me the opportunity to speak with the podcast listeners. I hope they find my experience useful and it helps them in some way.
I'm sure they will. One more week of the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast is over, but there's a lot more we have to share. We have developed our own membership site where you find a community of active and engaged Scrum Masters. In this site, you get access to exclusive content and get to interact with us, your podcast hosts, as well as the best Scrum Masters in the world. Join us at scrummastertoolbox.com/podcast and keep this podcast free of advertising. See you next week for one more week full of Scrum Master tips and tricks. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.